Hi, everyone. I'm Roberta Acu, and I serve as HSTA's Central Chapter President. I would like to welcome all of you here today to join us at this forum. We have some guests who are joining us that I would like to welcome as well personally. We have Senator Donna Mercado Kim with us. We have Representative Aaron Johansson, as well as Representative Linda Ichiyama. Joining us also from the Board of Education is our chair, Catherine Payne. We have two fabulous speakers joining us today. We have from the Board of Water Supply, Miss Kathleen Pahinui, and from the Sierra Club, Wayne Tanaka. And as well, we have HSTA's President, President Osatui Jr., and Vice President Logan Okita. Welcome, everyone. I look forward to learning from today's forum. Thank you for being here. I'll hand it over to Ray.
Thank you, Berta. Aloha, everyone. My name is Ray Camacho, and I'm the UNICEF Director assigned to the Aiea, Moanalua, and Radford complexes. And I guess I had the experience of seeing firsthand and visiting the schools when the water contamination and the fuel leak hit our campuses and our communities. And so the purpose of this forum was really to reach out to our teachers, especially those affected, those schools that are affected, and let them know they're not alone. And we thought we should go beyond that and maybe use this opportunity of sharing. So our hope during this forum is we're going to share, we have very important information from our guest speakers, of course, to provide us from the Board of Water perspective, the impacts this has had on our system and prospects going forward. And we also have a speaker from Sierra Club to also share from the environmental kind of more broader impact on our community in our island. But especially I'm very anxious to hear from our teachers. I've worked with our teachers. Most of the teachers you'll hear from tonight are volunteer head faculty reps at their respective schools. And they're also leaders within their campuses. And the stories that they've shared with me are nothing short of amazing. These are, I've always felt this about our teachers. They're unsung heroes in surviving through this pandemic, the last 2+ years. But especially with that as a backdrop, we have a water crisis where the public doesn't see the hard work and effort that our teachers, our administrators, and our employees on staff at the schools, that they've had to go through an experience. And I think there's an important question that gets raised is there's been some valiant, courageous efforts by many involved to keep our keiki safe in schools during this water crisis. However, are those efforts sustainable? And what other supports can our schools be given during this time? So at this point, Berta, we could turn it over to our first speaker.
Yes, please do.
So that's Kathleen Pahinui with the Board of Water Supply.
Okay.
Please let me know. Can you see my screen in full presentation mode?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yay. Okay, great. Love it. Thank you. I feel very honored to be a guest today and to speak to you. Our teachers are so often unsung heroes in our everyday life. And we were blessed to have quite a bit of contact, albeit under very unfortunate circumstances. But we were reaching out to a number of your teachers in the affected schools. And when I'm done, I'm happy to discuss things that we can do to work with you. Even though a number of the schools aren't on our system, we do take our kuleana seriously, and we know that we're all in this together. It's not a case of, oh, not my problem. It's everybody's problem. And that's kind of what I want to share with you today. So today I wanted to focus in on what all of this means for the Board of Water Supply, which really means, what does this mean for our entire island? Since we service, we're the largest water utility on the island. There are several private ones, obviously, since we know the Navy is a private water system. The only military outlet that we actually serve water to is the Kaneohe Marine Corps Base. So all the other military water systems are privately owned. Let's see. Okay, we have to do this way. Okay, a little bit of Water 101. And this presentation is also available for your keiki if you're working on specific lesson plans. We love to come out to the schools and share this information with you. So anything you see here today, give me a call and we'll work something out with you. As you know, our island sits over what we call the aquifer. The aquifer, despite what it looks like in this picture, is not a pool of water underneath the island. It's actually in the cracks and crevices of our lava rock. As you know, island is a volcanic island. Our volcanoes are no longer active, but it's a porous basalt and lava rock underneath it. And underneath there is what we commonly call brackish water, or the zone of mixture. That's where the salt and the fresh water mix. And then of course we have our salt water. I'm going to turn on my pointer here to help me with this. There we go. Now we're very blessed on this island. We have what we call a layer of what we call caprock. Caprock is sediment that's made of marine animals that have died, along with other things, and has formed this very thick clay-like sediment that we call caprock, and that sits over the edges of our island. And what this caprock does, it prevents the mixture of the salt and further mixture of the salt and the fresh water, and it prevents our fresh water from leaking out around. So we're very blessed that we have this huge, generous aquifer that supplies all of our water needs. And it's also one of the reasons Oahu, back in pre-contact days, was also so able to sustain such a large Hawaiian population because of the availability of fresh water. We get our water in 3 different ways through our dike system. Some of you have gone on our Way tour out in Kaneohe. And if you've been blessed to do that with Arthur Ayu, it's a great experience. And those are lava walls that have been thrust up from the floor. And then the water percolates and it's in between these little walls of lava. And then what we do is we punch a hole through one of the walls, and the water becomes gravity fed and comes out that way. A lot of our water resources on the windward side are dikes, and our gravity fed dikes. We have a couple in Manoa, and we have some out in the Waianae side. Many of you have also perhaps been on our Halawa shaft tour before we had to shut it down, which we hope to reopen soon. That is what we call an incline shaft. And that means it skims the water right off the surface. And if you remember, you going down into the shaft, we take you to the viewing room and you could see into the top of the aquifer. That's what we're skimming, just right off the top. We don't go any further into the water at that point. And then we have what we call deep wells. This is the majority of our water resources on the island, are deep wells, which are located throughout the island. And then of course we have artesian wells, which some of you may be familiar with in your community. Come on. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, as noted before, in the blue in this slide, this is the caprock. So when we talk about Red Hill and we talk about not being over the aquifer, We mean basically this part of the island, which is most of the island. But if you're over the a cap rock, that means that if you do have a leak, and also if you're above ground, it's easily seen. And if it's something should leak out, it's not going to leak into our freshwater aquifer because of this dense sediment. And if you'll notice, like areas like Campbell Industrial Park tend to be over the cap rock because that way nothing is going to leak into our water or into our ocean because of this dense marine sediment. This map comes from the Commission on Water Resource Management for the state of Hawaii. They oversee all water resources throughout the state. They are basically, they manage us. They tell us how much water we're able to take out of the aquifer on any given basis. They also talk about, and that's called the average yield, the sustainable yield for each of it. Now, the other thing about the aquifer that people, it's not little discrete aquifers. It's actually one big aquifer, as I mentioned before, with porous rock, basalt. Water travels, groundwater is always moving, it's always flowing. But what this commission did is they put in these artificial boundaries to help them manage the different sectors of the aquifer, so they know how much water is being pulled out at any given time, and they can manage the water to ensure that the sustainable yield is not exceeded and that we're not taking more than goes back into the aquifer. So one of the reasons why we're so concerned is this area of the aquifer. You can see here, Pearl Harbor, it supplies 166 million gallons of water per day. That's a lot of water, and we don't pull that much out of it, but that is how much it could be pulled out of it on an average day. And what you will notice is the Red Hill fuel facility is right on the boundary of this aquifer between these two sectors. Now, if you head east over to Honolulu, you will see that the average daily yield is only about 2 million gallons. This is the highest producing area, one of the highest productive areas of our aquifer. That means there's a lot of fresh water there. And that's why we're so concerned. And that's why we're trying to protect it, not just for the Board of Water Supply, but for anybody that uses this fresh water that pulls from the aquifer. So, you end up having less water over here, which is one of the reasons why we push water eastward to ensure that we can supply the needs of the community in those areas. I won't go too much into it. I'm sure you've seen a lot of this over the years. 20 fuel tanks, of which 18 are actually used. Actually, I think there's only 16 in service right now. About 180 million gallons of jet fuel and diesel are located in this ridge line above Pearl Harbor, and again, right above our freshwater source. They were built nearly 80 years ago, so they're pretty old. And they were built quickly because they were built under stresses of war. They were started prior to World War II starting for us, for America, but they were built during war. So it was a very stressful time, and they were in a very big hurry to make it work. The concrete has a 1/4 inch steel liner. So 1/4 inch is about maybe the thickness of your thumb, a little less. That's not a lot of security when you're talking about diesel fuel and jet fuel. And we know for a fact, because the Navy did do research and they took out some slices of one of the tanks, what they call coupons, and the back of it was rusted. So in some places, it's not even a 1/4 of an inch thick anymore. It's way less than that. And concrete, as we all know, we have concrete driveways, they crack, they leak, water gets in them. So the concrete is not a good barrier to prevent if there's a leak springs in the steel. The concrete's not going to prevent the oil or the diesel from getting out, as we well know. Here's a more technical, just to show you where the Navy's water source is. This is the one that contaminated the Navy's water system, Red Hill Shaft. Here are the tanks. This line right here is a tunnel that you can walk through if you've ever taken their tour. I did. It's quite interesting. It's very fascinating, actually. But right off this tunnel is where their drinking water, their pumping is. So it's not off away from where the tanks are. It's literally right there. It'd be like going from maybe your front of your house to the back of your house, if that even that far. And I didn't realize they were co-located until I took that tour, and it was kind of a interesting experience to see that. So again, another graphic from about 10,000 feet. Here's the fuel tank. Here's where our Halawa shaft is. It's less than a mile away. It's 0.95 mile. The other two wells that we had to shut down because we were concerned about contamination was our Halawa well and our Aiea well. These two serve the Aiea area only. Halawa actually is the one that serves all the way down out to Hawaii Kai. We shut these down as a precautionary measure. Once we heard that the Navy had shut down their Red Hill shaft, which is located here, we shut down Halawa shaft immediately. We have evidence from studies that the Navy has done that when Red Hill shaft is not running and it's just dormant and we're pumping, we have seen movement across the valley of water. We can see actually the water levels move. So we know that there's movement of water across the valley. So therefore we said, let's not take any chances. Let's shut it off and ensure that we're not pulling anything over. I'm sure you saw in the newspaper where when they did a initial test, it was like 130,000 parts per billion. It was a really big number. It was like hundreds of times well above the action level for the EPA or the DOH. So it was seriously contaminated. And you may have even seen some of the pictures of video of the divers going in and trying to clean it up. So the Navy has done risk assessment studies, and all the data that we share does come from Navy studies. They're kind enough, they give us the information, and then our experts, we have a technical team that does go over the data as well. In the Navy's own risk assessment, they said there was a 27% probability of a sudden release of fuel each year. And unfortunately, that has been happening the last couple of years. Yes, they're not super huge, but in our opinion, any fuel in the water is not really a good thing. And there's a greater of 34% of a sudden release of more than 120,000 gallons in the next 100 years. For those of you who are math teachers, that just because it's 100 years doesn't mean it's a good thing. That's really not a whole lot of span of time when you're talking about 34%. So if that number was like 10,000 years or 100,000 years, we would be less concerned. But 34% in 100 years is not a good number. That's that the probability becomes that much higher. And again, we have a 5% probability of a sudden release of more than 1 million gallons in 100 years. And then there are what we call chronic releases that happen constantly. And they expect that fuel releases about 5,800 gallons per year. And over 25 years, that would be about 145,000 gallons released into our aquifer. Here's a list of recent releases. As we know, this all kind of started back in 2014 with the 27,000 gallons that were released from tank 5 up to the November release where we had 14,000. They actually think it's much higher than that. They think it's closer to 19,000. They're still doing their study of trying to figure out where the oil came from, where the fuel came from. They think the May 6th event was linked to the November event, but the Navy is still in the process of investigating all of that. This is just a simple graphic kind of our infographic of our water system. We again, water, as you know, comes in through precipitation, takes about 25 years to trickle into the aquifer itself. And then we come in and we have these, as we mentioned, tunnels, shafts, and groundwater wells. We have 194 of those that we pump the water out. In certain areas of the island, we will treat it. For example, because of the legacy of sugar and pineapple chemicals in central and North Shore and central Oahu, we have to treat it for those agrochemicals. And so we use what we call granulated activated carbon. So we do that, but we don't do that in the rest of the island, just in those specific areas. Then we pump it up to reservoirs, and then through 2,100 miles of pipe, we deliver it to about 170,000 customers every day. And this is 145 million gallons of water that we serve to approximately 1 million people every day, including our visitors. This is a map of our Metro Honolulu, what we call our Honolulu Metro system. Here is Halawa Shaft. Here are some other pumping stations that we have, but these pumping stations alone are not enough to deliver water all the way out to just around Makapu'u there. We do have another source, another about 36-inch pipe. Those of you who remember that main break that was caused by the construction by the Army last July on Moanalua Freeway. Well, that's our other big service line into Metro Honolulu that serves water. So we serve 20% of our resources comes from Halawa Shaft. So we lost 20% of our water resources coming into Metro Honolulu. And that's why we're so concerned. And right now, well, it hasn't been too rainy lately, but we've had a good rainy start to the year. But as it gets drier and as it moves closer into the summer, we always get very concerned about, are we going to be able to deliver enough water? Because remember, we're managed by the state. We can't just keep pumping water because we want to pump water. We have rules that we have to follow. So if we start reaching what we call our sustainable yield, then we have to step back and say, what do we need to do to ensure that we're not over pumping, not just all of these sources, because the other issue that we could run into by over pumping is they start drawing in salt water, and we don't want to be doing that, and that would negatively impact the aquifer. So we are being proactive. We're looking at conservation measures, starting measures now, not waiting to our normal time, usually in the mid to late summer. We're actually going to be going out with some programs to reach what we call the hard to reach water user, people that live in townhomes or condos, people who may not get a water bill from us, but we still serve water too. So we'll be working on a number of issues regarding that. This is just a list of the kind of a timeline of the water contamination that happened at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam Housing. I'm sure some of you are far more familiar with this than I am, but this is what led to us shutting down the wells. And again, the DOH emergency order, which the Navy is working to address and follow. And we wish them luck and Godspeed on getting those things done. And then ultimately, this is kind of a summary of what we did. And we really firmly believe, we used to be proponents of the tank within the tank, put another liner in there that will help, it would collect anything that comes out. But based on what has happened with the contamination of the Navy's water system, distribution system, we honestly feel now the only way to prevent that from happening to the rest of the island, especially the Metro Honolulu area, is to completely remove the tanks. And they have identified at least 2 locations on Pearl Harbor, on Joint Base Pearl Harbor, that they could do above ground tanks. They're over the cap rock and with the double wall lining that would be extremely safe. And we would not have to worry about our water, our fresh water resources being contaminated. And I'm going to stop sharing now at this point. Turn off my pointer. Let's see. That off. And I'm going to stop sharing. And I will happy to take any questions. But one of the things I'd like to mention is, we're happy to work with the schools, especially the ones on base. Sometimes we have a rain barrel program, and perhaps there's a way we could integrate and use some of our rain barrels for non-potable uses, of course, but those things could help with, maybe washing the hands or, other, washing dishes or something. I'm not sure, but we would work with any principal or teacher that thinks that might be helpful. Whatever we can do. We have emergency water storage jugs that we have on hand that we could share. We did donate 3,000 of those to the Navy when they were starting through their trying to figure out what they were doing. So we're here to help in any way that we can. We're here to provide presentations. And again, and one last final thing. Osa, congratulations on being elected. Great job. Congratulations. And then I would like to say a big shout out to Senator Kim, Representative Johansson, Representative Ichiyama, and I saw that Councilmember Cordero was on. and they have been just stalwart supporters of ours for all these years, and we truly admire and appreciate their leadership in this incredibly difficult situation. And I also saw Peter Doctor on. He's also been a great community advocate. We really appreciate his advocacy. And of course, Wayne Tanaka with the Sierra Club has been absolutely wonderful. So at this point, I'm happy to take any questions, or, unless you wish to wait. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much, Miss Kathleen Pahinui. I did learn much. So I thank you for being here and being with us.
Thank you.
I believe next up will be Mr. Wayne Tanaka of the Sierra Club.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. Hi,
Oh,
Mr.
nice. Okay.
Tanaka.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present to you folks. And before I start, I just want to say, I'm just so grateful for all that you've done and you continue to do. Just throughout this entire situation that we've been going through. I've just been a huge admirer of all of your folks' efforts and what you're willing to do and sacrifice to educate our keiki. So just thank you so much. I will, so I have a quick presentation to kind of talk about the Red Hill facility as we see it and why we think it's so important that everyone get engaged around this issue. Let me see, there you go. So I just really want to talk really brief. Actually, Kathleen did such a great job on the background. You probably don't have very much to say there, but I do want to talk about some of the ongoing concerns that we have with the continued storage of 180 million gallons of fuel above this aquifer, and why it's such a real threat, ongoing threat, and also talk about then the ramifications of what it could mean if our worst fears are realized and we do see another leak, a catastrophic leak into this aquifer. And then I'll touch really quickly on some ideas of what folks can do, either the HSTA itself or the members of HSTA, as well as the other folks watching this presentation. So actually, I think Kathleen already went through all of this background information about the Red Hill facility and its history. I will say that when it was installed, when these tanks were installed, their liners, as Kathleen mentioned, were a 1/4 inch thick. So this is when they were new. If you shrank a tank down to the size of a hydro flask, like a 36-ounce hydro flask, the walls of that hydro flask would be like the thickness of tinfoil, of not even heavy duty tinfoil, but just regular tinfoil. So you can imagine that's and that's when these tanks are new. And so that's part of our concern, is now that it's 80 years, their integrity is just inherently unreliable. Sorry. And so I just want to go through some of the reasons why, even though we've been given a number of assurances over the years that this facility is safe, that it really is not inherently. So they point to a system of systems of that supposedly will be able to prevent leaks from happening. But really, the system's unreliable. So because these walls are so thin, around, as Kathleen mentioned, around these tanks is concrete. Because there's concrete, we can't actually see how bad the corrosion is. They did take coupons where they broke the concrete off to look, and what it turned out that the concrete is actually holding water against the steel. So this water and metal don't like to mix, it causes corrosion. And so these, as you can imagine, these walls are actively corroding, in some cases to a 1/3 of their original width or thickness. Again, we can't see the outside of the walls where the corrosion is happening. So what the facility operators do is this indirect inspection method, where they hang a person from the ceiling. And so this is the inside of a tank. And this is a person right here with a handheld scanner. And he's literally trying to scan every inch of the wall to see if there's any places that might need repairs. It turns out when they did take these coupons, after they had inspected the tank, that this inspection method is unreliable. It misses the mark. For the 10 coupons they took, 4 of them weren't valid in terms of what they thought. So in 2 cases, they said the wall here is fine, and it wasn't fine. It was actually corroded to the point where it needed repairs. And in 2 instances where they said it needed repairs, it actually hadn't corroded to the point where it would trigger their standard for repairs. And so their inspection method is really the only way that they can prevent releases from happening. And that's troubling. And on top of that, we also know that 8 of these tanks that currently have millions of gallons of fuel in them have not been inspected in 20 plus years. 3 of these have not been inspected in more than 38 years. So they haven't even inspected some tanks, which again have millions of gallons of fuel in them. They have a couple other systems to figure out if fuel is leaking. So they have a tank tightness test that they do twice a year, and they also do fuel level monitoring. It turns out though that these systems cannot actually detect slow leaks. So anywhere between 1,600 and 2,400 gallons of fuel can leak out from a single tank without being detected. And that's a concern, not just because it's bad to have slow leaks of fuel above a water supply, but then you have fuel that you don't know about outside of these tanks that can create a fire risk or other vulnerabilities that could lead to something catastrophic. Also too, if you don't know that there's slow leaks going on, you don't know that you might be approaching a point where you're going to see much more significant failures in the infrastructure. And we also don't know if these systems work as well as they say they do. In 2020, there's a leak at Hotel Pier in Pu'uloa from a pipeline connected to the facility. They couldn't confirm this until July of 2021. And as Kathleen noted, we also don't know where this fuel, we don't know conclusively where this fuel came from that's in the Red Hill drinking water shaft, which raises the question as to whether there was an undetected leak. And then finally, there's things that the system just simply doesn't address. So they cannot prevent earthquakes. There was in 1948 an earthquake on Oahu. It resulted in about 46,000 gallons being released from a tank. And this was back when the tanks were pretty new, like they were built in 1943. They were finished in 1943. So now it's 80 years later, another earthquake like that could be pretty bad in terms of a catastrophic release. The Navy can't prevent human error, as they've demonstrated time and again. The 2014 spill and this past spill in May of last year were attributed to human error. And to the extent that human error could result in things like explosive changes in pressure in May, which caused pipes to literally blow off of their couplings and bang into adjacent metal fixtures and deform them. Like that could result in things like sparks, which again, combined with undetected leaks could lead to catastrophe. And as we probably know, some of the biggest environmental disasters in recent history have been caused by human error. And that's, again, simply something that the Navy and its system cannot prevent. And so what happens if we have a catastrophic contamination? Well, or a catastrophic release, sorry. The 27,000 gallon spill in 2014 did reach the groundwater. We know that a spill of 1 million gallons is like 37 times that much. So a spill of just a fraction of the fuel in just one tank would, basically dwarf what happened in 2014, potentially contaminate the aquifer irreparably. And once it is contaminated, the aquifer is really, it's impossible to remediate it or clean it up, especially after a big spill. So what happens if we do see a big spill? Well, we don't know that this current crisis that we're facing will be amplified. Again, this is the aquifer that provides 20% of the drinking water for the island, and it serves 450,000 people from Halawa to Mauna Loa. And so a catastrophic contamination will, it'll change life as we know on this island for generations. In the worst case scenario, our water system gets contaminated, in which case we might have to, replace our entire water system, which be terrible. And the best case is, the Board of Water Supply, like it in this case, are able to know when there's a spill and then shut their wells down so that our system isn't contaminated. But then again, we still have 20% of our island's water supply unusable indefinitely. And so what does this mean for our students for keiki. First of all, the HSTA, they understand how important it is to have access to clean water in schools, for childhood development, for learning, for health purposes, reasons. Schools, as we see now, may have to be forced to spend more of the resources on water and sanitation and instead of on curriculum and other things necessary for our students' education. And then there's the impairment of this incredibly important cultural resource that may be essential to current and future programming, and culturally enriched curricula and so forth. And in the bigger picture, what we're trying to do with our students is prepare them for a future, thriving, prosperous life that will be very hard to do if we lose this water source. Our environment, this groundwater source, it feeds the large environment, right? So Pu'ulo and Pearl Harbor, Moalua, Ke'ehi, estuaries, streams may become compromised. Huge waste stream and potential, fossil fuel impacts if we have to import bottled water or if we have to filter water or transport it from different places. If to the extent we may need to draw water from other places, we're going to see impacts to stream flow that's connected to groundwater, springs, estuaries, and so forth. In terms of housing, you can't build housing or ADUs or address our housing needs now, housing needs, which are already significant now, if you don't have water. Water credits are a huge part of development. And so those, housing production may be compromised or foreclosed. We'll probably see displacement as, if people, especially if the housing units for 450,000 people become uninhabitable because they have no clean water. We're going to see exodus to neighbor islands, to the continent, and then of course the economy, right, and the jobs it creates. Without water, you're going to have huge impairments in economic activity. Everything from tourism to small businesses have to pay higher overhead, and the jobs it create, everything in between. And then also to impacts of financial institutions that provide the credit, that allow for economy to run, as well as potential investments in new economic endeavors maybe foreclosed if we don't have the water that those kinds of things need. And then I just want to there's something I've been reflecting on recently, especially watching how the families and the schools and students have been treated during this current crisis. And there's a saying, a pretty old saying, the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. And in a lot of ways, I feel like this is what the folks who run Red Hill, this is the philosophy they're ascribing to. In all ways, we're being treated as expendable, and the continued resistance to acknowledging the threat, the existential threat that's being posed by the continued storage of 180 million gallons of fuel above our water supply, and that's just treating us and our keiki and their future as an acceptable risk, as expendable, and that's something that robs them and robs us of their dignity. And so I also like to reflect, I've been reflecting recently on a Frederick Douglass quote about how the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. And so really, I think, thinking back to what our ancestors did, what our teachers did, dedicate their lives towards making our lives better. They didn't do that for us to surrender our dignity and dignity of our students in our keiki here in Hawaii. So what do we do? So this is what we're trying to do. What we need to do is to defuel the Red Hill facility as soon as possible and decommission it permanently so this can never happen again. How to get there? I do want to note that even though we did have kind of a win with the Department of Health order being upheld, it's not clear that we're on our way out. The DOH order itself has very soft deadlines for defueling. There's a February 2nd deadline date for the Navy's work plan to defuel. It looks like the Navy is interpreting that as a deadline for an assessment for a work plan, and which won't be done until April. And then after that, they have to do the corrective actions needed to make it safe to defuel. And then, whenever those things are done, then they have 30 days to defuel. So it's really up in the air, like when we'll see this facility, the fuel removed from this facility. And also, I think it's important to note that in 2015, after the big 2014 spill, there were a number of promises, commitments made by the Navy in an administrative order of consent that have not been completed 7 years later. So that risk assessment that Kathleen talked about, it's still not done. Those percentages of risks are based on internal events only. There's 3 more phases where they're supposed to look at things like fires, like earthquakes. Those haven't been done at all. And so really those risk percentages will only go up, if they were to finish their assessment. Their tank upgrade alternative report was rejected because it didn't actually choose the best, most protective alternative. As Kathleen, I think, mentioned. Again, the inspection repair process has been rejected as unreliable, and the groundwater model is broken. It doesn't align with the groundwater elevation levels that we can actually measure, even though it's a really, it's a very complicated, complex model. It's broken. And so what can we do? Given that we still seem to need, as much engagement to push for the defueling of this facility. First, the main thing I think is to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, let them know that this is going to impact them. I'm still hearing a lot of concern that there are many people who don't know what's going on, don't think that this is something that will affect their lives or the lives of the people they care about, because they don't live in the vicinity of the Red Hill facility. So definitely let everyone know that this is something that is posing an existential threat to the people on Oahu and potentially throughout the islands. There are some grassroots groups that have been formed now, Ko'hewai, Oahu Water Protectors, which Pete is a very great member of, and then also the Sierra Club, of course. And you can sign up for action alerts at our website, sierraclubhawaii.org/redhill. What we are asking people to do is write letters to the president, and you can do that on our website as well. I think, to the extent that the HSTA and its members might also be able to reach out to his cabinet. So the Secretary of Education might be a really good person and relevant person for people here to think about reaching out to. There's a really awesome initiative by Dyson Chi. He's with the Hawaii Youth Climate Coalition. And what he's offering to do is he can help coordinate, he's coordinating a signature scroll campaign. So if you're interested, if your students are interested, your school is interested, you can get a big long scroll, and students can sign their name, draw pictures, kind of express in a very creative way why it's so important to deal with the situation, defuel the facility, and decommission it, and protect their future. And so that's his email. You can email him directly if you are interested in participating. And the idea is to create like a massive mega scroll from all the schools with thousands of signatures that we can then present to the president sometime in the near future. And then to the extent that HSTA might have connections with the National Education Association, I think those would be we really need discourse on the national level to reach the Pentagon and the White House, because those are the decision makers that can really protect us and keep us safe. And then there's of course legislation that's currently being considered by the legislature. There's a hearing on Wednesday on one bill that with some amendments could help to permanently shut down Red Hill and similar facilities that are located above our groundwater aquifers. There's a City Council bill, Bill 48, that Council Member Cordero and Council Chair Waters introduced. That's also in play. And there's like 20 other Red Hill bills that have been introduced. So again, if you sign up for our action alerts, we'll definitely send information about those and heads up when they get hearings. And so I think that's it. Just in reflection, this is the water source that Red Hill is above, that it's contaminating. It's some of the purest water in the world. Like it's recognized for that. It takes a generation, 25, 30 years for the water, the rains and the mists in the Mauka areas to percolate through and filter out. And that's why it's so pure once it gets down there. And now we're potentially looking at this incredibly amazing source of life become contaminated irreversibly in our lifetimes. And I don't think we can let that happen. I do think that together we can be the ones, we will be the generations that actually end this threat finally, once and for all. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka, for joining us today and sharing with us. At this time, we are going to hear the stories of some of the teachers whose campuses have been impacted by this water contamination. Uh, Mr. Camacho, if you could please present the speakers.
Thank you, Berta. Just before I introduce them, I wanted to say, as the HSA representative and advocate, when this happened, uh, I vividly recall safety is a major concern, and I did research and learned that there's an OSHA requirement for clean, hot and cold running water in every school, or at least tepid water. And so first, I thought maybe the strategy is to look at a school closure until this could get addressed. But then I had thought, let me ask my school level leaders. Some of them are in this forum tonight, and try to get a temperature check from the teachers. And again, unsung heroes. This is what the teachers felt. They knew it would be a challenge, but at the time they felt it's better to keep the schools open, because actually schools were a place where they could get clean water because they couldn't get it at home. And I also want to acknowledge the efforts of getting bottled water brought in to the schools and hand washing stations. And that was under the leadership of Complex Area Superintendent John Erickson. So I saw this tremendous effort, for our keiki and keeping them safe. And so the important thing was to work with the department and work with our schools and our teachers to make sure they had the support they needed. But the question remains, is this sustainable? And one lesson I would share, and I shared this with Kaz Erickson, is I think in the future when there's this type of crisis that occurs, schools need transition time to prepare their personnel for major logistical changes when they bring in these portable water tanks and hand wash stations. Prepare teachers, because there's a transition when you now have to take students by hand and help them get washed and supervise for all those things that occur, or even assessing, maybe we need to deliver instruction a little differently because, students are now displaced and in hotels. So I think there's lessons from this that hopefully we don't have a crisis like this, but I think in the interest of trying to keep students in schools, everything was rushed, and it just compounded the anxiety that our teachers were already experiencing with COVID. So with that, I'd like to introduce, and it's not really in any order, but maybe we could start with our teacher representative from Red Hill Elementary, Cindy Dews. Cindy, are you there?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Okay, so our admin was really good about making sure that we had water right from the start. So we were without water for maybe a day or two, and then they brought in the water pumps. But unfortunately, the water pumps were really hard for the students to use. So we had and needed volunteers to help them pump water to wash their hands. So we took away the water pumps, and now we have these 5-gallon jugs, like Home Depot buckets, that they put a spout on. And so those are being refilled by the Army daily. So we're lucky that we have a lot of support. Unfortunately, it's still kind of rough because the water jugs run out at various times during the day. I guess it just depends on how much the kids use during the day. So we have like a lot of students coming back saying there's no water, there's no soap, there's sometimes no paper towels. And so it's kind of really hard because they're juggling between soap bottle dispensers and the actual ones that are on the wall. So they kind of don't know which ones to use. So they're like, oh, there's no soap, but then it's actually in the wall dispenser and not in the soap bottles. So it's been pretty hard because almost 2/3 of our student population is dealing with this water situation. So they're dealing with having to switch from the hotel to home to hotel to home. So we've had a lot of behavioral issues because of it, either because the kids feel that, it's really unstable to be not knowing where you're going to be at, like, am I going to be at home? Am I going to be at the hotel and whatnot? And also some of the kids had to wake up at be ready at 5:30 in the morning for the bus to come pick them up and transport them to school, which means they came to school super tired, hungry because they didn't get to eat. And then they go back home and they're shuffled around again. So so we've had to deal with some behavioral issues. But our admin has been very good at supplying the necessary supplies to supplement the water shortage. So we have antibacterial hand wipes and disinfectant wipes, water bottles up the yin yang for the kids and the staff. So our supplies otherwise are really good. There were a few reports in the beginning of students complaining about stomach pains and whatnot. And that was just a few of them. Right now, they're complaining that they still have to eat frozen pizza and chicken nuggets every day for lunch because we don't have water to, to cook with or to clean the, the supplies or the pans and whatnot. So that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. Basically, sometimes running out of water and the lunches. But other than that, we are very fortunate to have the military come and help us out with all the supplying the water and whatnot, refilling it for us. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, let's move to Hickam Elementary, Michelle Sasaki. Are you there, Michelle?
Hi, yes, I'm here. So hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Sasaki. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Hickam Elementary. First of all, I want to say thank you to Ms. Kathleen Pahinui and Mr. Tanaka. Thank you so much for your information. To tack on to what Ms. Dews was saying about her students, I echo the same thing. So when it comes to families, right, families are commuting back and forth. So whereas the Army is providing buses from hotels, my students 100% are living on base, Pearl Harbor Hickam. There's no buses for them. So parents are commuting and driving through traffic. So we have to, if they're tardy, we give them grace, we understand. They are dealing with deciding, do you stay at a hotel or do we just go there to shower, come back home? They have pets to take care of. Kids are concerned about their pets when they come in, just as she mentioned. They're tired, they're hungry. I had one student today falling asleep on his desk because he strolled in late because they had to drive from Waikiki, what looked to be in his pajamas, poor thing, bedhead. So, and my neighbor teacher, Mrs. Rizal, her student had to come in from the hotel today and straight up told her he had no breakfast. And she had snack and was begging her for extra snack because in his words, quote unquote, the story she told me, I told you I had no breakfast today. So we're having meltdowns, student behaviors, it's just a lot of stress for families. I know some have reported the burning feeling on their skin. And families are left to guess, is it safe enough to wash my clothes or not? So our school has free dress at this, because typically we have school uniforms. So right now we're going with free dress to alleviate the clothes washing issue. Some are unsure, do I throw out all these dishes? They come with, they don't have their regular water bottle because their parents are concerned if, there's fuel attaching to their water bottles and their dishes. And, parents are purchasing their own water filtration. And they're guessing, maybe it's safe enough to do this. Maybe it's safe enough. I can jump in the shower for 3 minutes and then jump out, and there's a lot of stress at home. And then on the school side, just as she mentioned, right, a lot of decisions are being left to administrators. So depending on your administrator, is the decision you get. So it sounds like Ms. Dews has a good one at Red Hill. I'm lucky, I'm very fortunate that we have a great one at our school, because as soon as the news broke on, the TV about, oh, there's this water contamination, no one told our school. So, he's just going by, oh, I heard this, so we better not use the water. It could be safe, maybe it's not, but what side do we err on? Well, we need to be safe for our students and families and our teachers. So, they're rushing out to go purchase water at Costco. They're spending school money on that at the beginning, right? This is before all the donations. They're rushing out to run to Costco for hand, sanitizer and baby wipes. And that's what we were running on for weeks. In the middle of COVID, when you're supposed to be washing your hands with soap and water. And then, to help alleviate that, we're purchasing or procuring vendors for hand washing stations. This is before the Navy decides to fund it, right? Our school funds are being used for that. So what's the consequence? We're supposed to get upgraded on our technology. Now we got to sell off our computers. We can't order them anymore, our 10-year-old computers. So that's what we're running on, and our computers, our Chromebooks for students, they're so old now, they don't update. But too bad, we spent our money on, trying to get safe water. Luckily, the Navy is going to fund some of these portable washing stations at this point. But, previously, our school is spending $1,000 a week. That's, school monies. And supposedly we're going to get, reimbursed. But as we all know how the DOE works, that's who knows when. It's really a sad situation, because the only certain thing right now is uncertainty, right? We don't know how long this is going to last. It went from a few weeks to now we're getting to the middle of February. Who knows, maybe by the end of the school year. At one point, we just wanted to make it to winter break with the hopes that things would kind of come to some sort of positive conclusion, but it's not. It's not the most healthy environment for our students. We also have the buckets with the spigots, but teachers are running around trying to refill it, or students are running down to the water buffalo to get clean water. So I mean, it's really sad. Although on the positive side, everyone's come to realize how precious, how important water is. You can't take it for granted. And I think that's definitely one lesson my students have learned. Prior to, you try to instill not to turn you got to turn the faucet off. But I think now they're coming to realize how crucial clean water is. It's unfortunate. This is the way they had to learn the lesson. So I would just implore, I really don't know what the solution is, but for sure we need to step up all our efforts on engaging with, maybe emptying the tanks or something, and making sure that people are aware of what's happening to our students and our teachers and the schools, because I'm not sure about the other schools, but we also have a lot of teachers that are also military families who also are trying to deal with their own children and their situation while coming into school to teach every day as well. So thank you. Sorry, that was a big long thing, but thanks for listening.
Thank you, Michelle. That was very, very good. Okay, let's move on. Let's see, is Leilani Guzme, are you there? Pearl Harbor Kai Elementary?
Hello. I'm Leilani Ngumezi. I teach at Pearl Harbor Kai, 6th grade. So a lot of the things, I'm going to try not to repeat too much, but there are a lot of similarities between what we are doing at our school and some of the issues that we have had. There has been a lot of stress among the students, among the teachers, among the families. Of course, compounding our water issues with all of the COVID issues and quarantining our classrooms has, just been massive. The first week of school was, just, a huge hit to us. But, I wanted to just, besides all of the issues of, just getting water, at the very beginning, we did have a lot of help. Our administration was great getting, immediately first day of school, second day of school, making sure that all of the classrooms had bottles of water, jugs of water, just trying to make sure that we had all that. And then that's when the military started coming in, volunteers coming in, and making sure that we had all of those things. And as Ray had mentioned, the sustainability part is what's really important. And I think that even though it hasn't even been a month, has petered out slightly. And so, one of the things that we've had to do a lot is that it's the large containers of water. It's the bulk water that we have had had a problem with. We have plenty of bottles, those 16-ounce bottles, we have plenty of those. And so what I'm having to do is, and a lot of our teachers are having to do, is empty those smaller bottles into our 3 to 5 gallon jugs in order to have the hand washing stations, with the little water pumps. So, water ran out today during, when the kids were washing hands after lunch. So here I am unscrewing water bottles and just dumping water in as fast as I can, and so it's little things like that, we can't plan for how fast the water is going to run out and when we need more. But, just to kind of, talk about the families a little bit too, as others were saying, our families are staying in hotels. They were sick. They can't, do laundry like they were. We also canceled our uniforms in order for the students to be able to just be at school. I swear one of them was in pajamas. I did not say a word because I was just happy she was there. So, that was totally fine. We have students who are late, but again, we are happy that they are there. We have had a lot of absences because, either one of the kids was sick from, stomach pains, things like that, that they're attributing to the water. So one kid is out, they're taking the other sibling out as well. So those have been issues. If the only computer that the students have to do their homework is a, like a PC kind of standalone computer, they're not taking that with them to the hotel. So, that's just another thing about not being able to get some of their work done. Plus, I was asking some of my students, you okay sharing a room? Is that, and they're like, yeah, it's kind of hard to concentrate because I have to share, one room with, and luckily they're only sharing it with maybe their sibling. So they have, it's not like the entire family in one room. But that's another issue, is that they don't have that privacy that, they are used to at their own house. So that's something, the kids are like, ooh, at first, hotels are fun, but then it stops being fun. Same thing with pizza. One of my kids said that they're just tired of pizza. Their mom asked if this weekend, hey, you want to get some pizza? She's like, no. And, what kid has, refused to have pizza? I think the mom was kind of shocked. Another story that I heard from my kids was, I have one student who has axolotls as pets, and he told me that he is probably going to have to give them away. They have a 75-gallon tank and they cannot afford to refill that tank with the water. And so he's heartbroken that he has to get rid of his pets, because of this. It's too expensive to have to refill it. So, I mean, we can all come up with all of these stories that are just individual, stories from all of our kids that are just heartbreaking to us, that our kids are having to deal with this huge upheaval that has no fault of their own, totally out of their control, and yet it's something that they have to deal with. And for some people, those kinds of things are, will tug at their heartstrings. Those stories really impact them. But for some people, it comes down to money. And I think that long-term effects are something else that we have to think about. And I think Mr. Tanaka had kind of touched on this as well. You're going to get people who no longer want to move into the housing that is in this area. We already have student enrollment that has been declining. And what's going to happen is there are going to be people who no longer want to move into the military housing that is in our area. Our enrollment will continue to decline, and that is going to mean less students and less money for teachers. And we are going to lose positions at our schools because of that lower enrollment. We are also going to lose good teachers. Why would a teacher want to stay at a school where they have to fill water bottles every day? There is no, one of my friends was telling us the other day over dinner, when you were going to study to be a teacher, did they tell you all about, having to refill water containers and, deal with all of these like pandemic issues? It was like, nope, didn't cover any of that stuff. So, these are issues that if you can go to another school and not have to deal with spending 30 minutes in the morning before school filling up a water jug and making sure that everything is all set for at least the first few hours of the day, why would you do that? So there's going to be a lot of long-term effects of this as well. And we're afraid that, we're going to definitely be losing some teachers as a part of this. We have had some good help from the military. They have tried to make it a little bit easier on us teachers by muscling through, bringing up water containers, bringing up bottles of water. That's really helped, because I think just physically, we're so mentally drained, to be able to physically help us bringing up some of those things. A lot of us are on the second floor, just helping us physically to bring up cases of water has really been helpful. So I know that they're trying. We're still, hoping that they'll keep coming. Again, that sustainability of making sure that the help is still there, because we still need it. So I just hope that that continues. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Leilani. Okay, next we have Blythe Everett from Nimitz Elementary School. Blythe, are you there?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Blythe Everett. So our admin's done a phenomenal job at getting water into our classrooms. We have a plethora of water bottles, and then we also have the 5-gallon water jugs. It kind of looks like Costco in our cafeteria right now. When it first happened, we got the spray bottles, and then we were able to get the 5-gallon jugs that have this rechargeable spout, and those are in all the classrooms. And then we do have hand washing stations set up around campus at all the different bathrooms. And then the janitors and some Navy volunteers have been coming around to refill the bottles and then redistribute them back to classrooms. We have wipes and hand sanitizer if needed. Our lunch menu was altered. It's hard to say percentage-wise of what families decided to move off base, because when we did our initial tally, it was like 15 to 20%. But some families are either staying in hotels like for the weekends and then coming back to their homes during the week. It just kind of varies. We do have the water tank, the big guy that's in our parking lot, that's been refilled a couple times. And then I do know, talking to our principal, that they did the mainline flush with the fire hydrants. And then they came around on Wednesday last week to do a building flush. And then they did test water on Friday, which hopefully we'll get the results like in about a week. But other than that, most of us are in pretty good spirits at our school. It's kind of been working out, and we've been doing what we've had to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Blythe. Okay, next we have Jennifer McCord from Pearl Harbor Elementary. Jennifer?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer McCord, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Pearl Harbor Elementary. I've actually been a teacher at that school for over 21 years. A lot of the things I'm going to mention, other teachers have said before. In kindergarten, our students can't pump the big jug by our sink for hand washing, so the teachers are having to help them with that. That takes a lot of time. And also, we have a lot of kids that are coming to school tired because they have to wake up extra early because they're living in Waikiki. And then some of the kids are late because they get stuck in traffic coming to our school and they miss some of the morning business. And that just throws everything off. We also have lots of water at our school. Our administration's been really good, and we've been getting water from the military. For the bottled water, it takes time because for kindergarten kids, we need to write their name on each bottle of water so they don't mix it up with the other students' water. And also it's hard for them to open. So just talking more about time that we have to spend doing these things to help the children make sure they get enough to drink and they have clean hands. Also, our school has softened the uniform policy to try to help out the parents because they were having trouble being able to, wash clothes frequently. So our school has done that. And basically, we're just trying to be very flexible and patient and, listen to the parents and try to help them in any way possible that we can. And that's it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, last speaker we have here, Johara from Mokulele Elementary. Jody? She was on earlier. Is Jody there? If not, Berta.
Hi, I'll speak.
Yes, Berta.
Jody is from my school.
Jody is here. I'm trying to get her to unmute. Jody is here.
Okay. Well, while we're unmuting Jody, how's it going? I really would like her to speak if given the opportunity. Well, you know what? While we're working on it, let me share a little. I work at Mokulele Elementary School. I am a special education teacher for second and third grade. And as you've heard from many of the schools that surround us, oh, I see Jody.
No, Jody wanted Neva to speak, so Neva is here. It's just that I
Oh,
had to
Neva, would you
go
like to speak for us?
Sure.
Okay.
That was my job for today. Sorry about that. Okay. Mokulele School is like she said, like a lot of the other schools. We have lots of bottled water. We have pumps with 5-gallon bottles to wash hands with. They have just installed a system of using like a 5-gallon City Mill kind of bucket, those buckets you get, put a spigot at the bottom to use in our restrooms to wash hands with. They're just installing those. But yeah, a lot of it is time. In kindergarten, at least, we don't give them the whole bottle because it takes too long. So we just build their cups or their thermoses back up with water instead of giving the whole thing because they don't drink that much water when they ask for water. So instead of wasting, we share the water. So we have lots of bottled water in the lower grades. Upper grades, I think they give them the whole bottle. Let's see. We also have been lax with the uniform policy, so they don't have to do their laundry. Some of them do come to school late because of traffic on days that they're coming from somewhere else. So it gets complicated sometimes, but that's where we are too. We have lots of water though in our school, but none of it coming out of the faucets. Is that good?
Yeah, that's
And
great. Thank you very
you can
much.
add it.
Okay.
I was going to turn it back over to Berta. Berta, maybe you can address something that has to do with the impact on instruction.
Well, as you've been hearing, many of the teachers have needed to step in to help students. Right now, safety has always been a top priority. And with COVID-19 among us, it's always been shared how hand washing is the best. We've used the wipes, we've used the hand sanitizer. Now, with the water being provided, teachers, we need to take that time away from instruction to help our students with the water, to help them have their hands cleaned. Um, so, we have the absences, we have the tardies, and those are all minutes being lost. And yes, it's beyond the students, but this is what is happening, the loss of instructional time. There's also the big question of when does this end? When does this end? When this first began, one day I just sat at my desk and I'm like, oh my gosh, how long have we been doing this? And I looked at the calendar and I went, it's only the second week. So that's an impact on our teachers. Um, when does it end? We don't know. To our understanding, they need to keep flushing the pipes until it passes the levels where the water is usable. Um, and the impact on the students, it tugs the heart when a student comes up to you and says, I can't go home. I have to stay in the hotel. And in the beginning, it was fun, but now the student is, I just want to go home. And then you have the students who don't want to eat the pizza every day, and you have to be creative to figure out how are you going to break the news to them without it ruining their educational time. So there's a lot on the shoulders of the educators. We are troopers. We do what we can, and we always give our all. Yet when does it end? Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Berta. So I think before I turn it over to our president, Osatui, I believe we did have a request from Representative Johansson because the communities affected most are the ones that he represents. So Representative Johansson, would you like to say a few words with us?
Yeah, I mainly just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone for sharing, and thank you HSTA for setting this up. I know it's your everyday lives, and while that can make it sometimes easier to talk about, it's not an easy subject. I particularly appreciate you, Cindy, Michelle, Leilani, Blythe, Jennifer, Jody, and Berta, and some of you are friends that go way back a decade plus, and I'm so sorry that everyone is having to struggle with this. I wanted to just really quickly, in addition to just saying, thank you for being those heroes. I mean, I don't know any profession that has to just continually go over and above and beyond, just teaching, but really being sort of life coaches, being surrogate family, and being part of just helping to make life normal for so many children that are having their lives disrupted. Really, I mean, it makes what you do special, and it has long-term positive impacts. I mean, I wish that we were not in this situation, but I thank you for really being part of probably the only normalcy that some of these kids and families have right now. I did want to give you just a little bit of supplement to what Kathleen and Wayne had mentioned. And I'll start macro and I'll be really quick. The House intends to submit a resolution that codifies a letter that we sent to the Secretary of Defense, not only asking for the defueling of the Red Hill facility, but for the decommissioning of it to remove sort of this long-term specter over the aquifer, which sort of ensures long-term that this situation doesn't keep happening again and again, whether it's to impacted military families in their water system or to all of Oahu. Because that is a risk if the aquifer is contaminated based on this facility. So it's the House's position actually to decommission the facility and just move the fuel to somewhere not above the aquifer. On a school, and you will see many, many bills that do this. I think one of the most powerful things coming out of the House, though, will be this resolution codifying that. But you'll see additional bills that also seek to effectuate this. On a education specific level, the House Finance Committee is working on issuing guidance to each of the departments, and particularly DOE is most affected, but each of the departments to preserve their records to ensure that we can work with the congressional delegation to get reimbursement. When this first happened and I spoke with, 2 of the 7 elementaries or 7 schools are in my district, Red Hill Elementary and Pearl Harbor Elementary. And when I spoke with both of the principals, I know that Kumari and Shannon were using a lot of their own monies, to supplement immediate action. And I think Michelle Sasaki from HICM was right. This is taking away from other important education-related purposes, and so we want to make sure that that we pursue with the congressional delegation reimbursement so that schools are made whole and not long-term compromised. I mean, certainly your current mission is compromised right now by not being able to replace Chromebooks or do other things, but we want to make sure that that's not a legacy that continues, that you have to carry indefinitely. Also, I think just making sure that we don't see, even if we see some of the population shifts that Leilani spoke about and many commented on the chat, that doesn't impact you folks, even though it certainly impacts your enrollment numbers, and normally that would impact the staffing. I know that the DOE is looking at, because this is such an aberration and such an anomaly, can exceptions be made? So I know that they're exploring that and having conversations at their level, recognizing that this is a crisis and an emergency. This is not necessarily indicative of long-term patterns. And lastly, I think the state really needs to take a look at, because these DOE facilities are the state's, irrespective of whether they're on military property or not. I mean, I was surprised that Red Hill Elementary, which is not on a military base, is on the military's water supply. That, how do we get them connected to the Board of Water Supply so that our fates are not necessarily tied to an entity over which we don't have really any control, namely sort of the federal government or the military. But just most of all, just wanted to thank you folks. And there's active partnership between the congressional delegation, the state, the county, groups like the Sierra Club, the Board of Water Supply. I think everybody's working to try to do what they can to mitigate this. So most of all, just wanted to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Representative Johansson. So before we turn it over to President Osatuli, perhaps we can have a brief time for questions of any of our presenters. So if anybody has any questions, we'd like to bring them up now after hearing the presentation from either Kathleen Pahinui from Board of Water or from Wayne Tanaka from Sierra Club or any of our teachers. Feel free to bring up your questions now. you need, if you do want to speak, you need to unmute yourself first.
Ray, they'll need to go into the reactions and click raise hand, and then I will ask to unmute them. Our first question is from Esme.
Aloha, thank you for the opportunity and thank you to all the presenters. This has really been an eye-opening chance to hear what's happening on the ground level. My initial question has to do with the cost of providing all of the things that the different schools have been talking about. I heard the superintendent, in a report last week say that the initial cost of what the schools are bearing is about $15,000 so far, and that sounded low to me, given now what I'm hearing from different schools saying, they're having to contract with different vendors to get hand washing stations and all this other stuff. Does that 15,000 track for you? Does that sound low?
That sounds extremely low, and I'm not sure if that just means that the department at the state level has put out 15,000 and doesn't take into account everything that our schools have had to put out for this as well.
Does anyone else have questions? You can go into the bottom under reactions, click raise hand, and I will unmute you. If you do not have that feature, you can type your name in the chat and then I will unmute you there as well. Okay, and right.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm a retired Army colonel. I've lived here in Hawaii for the last 20 years, and I can only imagine what would happen if the jet fuel from Red Hill goes into the rest of our aquifer. And while the military has kind of taken care of its own, I wouldn't say it has done a super job of it, but the rest of the 400,000 people that use that aquifer, there, in my opinion, there would be no way in the world the military would take on taking care of all of us. So it only underscores the fact that we've got to permanently shut down those tanks before an even greater disaster occurs. And so my question, though, is both to either one, to Wayne or the fine lady from the Board of Water Supply. How are there estimates of how much that would cost? Right now, the military says they've already spent $250 million on something, whether it's the granulated carbon filtration units and the contractors from the continent, but any cost estimates on should the major disaster hit? Thank you so much.
I'm happy to address that, sir, if that's okay. We are actually gathering that information as we speak. My boss, as I mentioned earlier, is being proactive and looking at what the cost would be to put in a new well. A new well costs around $3 million thereabouts. So if we have to dig new wells and we have to say dig 10 of them, that's over $30 million. I can tell you right now, we are currently looking at our capital improvement project, which we figure 6 years out. And he has asked everyone to go back and say, what projects can we defer? I want to make sure I have enough money to react to anything that I need to react in the next however long. Because you're right, we do not know when we're going to be able to turn Halawa back on or IAR or Halawa wells back on. So we're trying to be proactive, look at all options and figure out what our long-term strategy is going to be. And we actually started that almost the day after it happened, because this is something we've been mentally and to some degree preparing and planning for since 2014. This is something we've been working, unfortunately had to work for us. You were in the military, you know what an ERP is, an emergency response plan. So that's what we've been working on since 2014. So thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your comments.
Blythe, do you have a question?
Not a question, but I know cost wise, I know our school has personally spent a little over 5,000 out of pocket right now.
Ray, you have a question?
I do, and this question actually is on behalf of a number of the teachers I've spoken to. And it has to do with the Navy's water supply, and that we understand they've been flushing it out and testing the water. And that just seems very short-sighted. And I guess the question, maybe it's for Board of Water, is has there been any discussions about the Board of Water providing direct water? You know, I know it's going to be a tremendous construction project to get water lines to these schools, but it just seems short-sighted to think that they're going to flush out their water system, which has been contaminated, and think that it, you know, hope and pray it will be safe. So I don't know if there's been any talk about the future of replacing the Navy's water supply and the timeline or costs related to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's an excellent question. To my knowledge, we have not been approached. If that's something the DOE wants to open a conversation, they'll need to make an official ask of my boss, Mr. Ernest Laus, in the letter. You know how it is, bureaucracy, you got to go through the channels, right? So that way I would respectfully ask that probably is the right way to do it. The issue would be, the other issue is, even though now Red Hill, let's put Red Hill Elementary aside, because somebody mentioned they're not on Navy land, though they get Navy water. The others, because they are on the base, the Navy would have to be part of that conversation, and they would have to agree to that. So it's a complicated question. It's an excellent question. And I'd say if there is a desire for that conversation, I would strongly suggest you go to the DOE and ask them what their plans are and what their long-term plans are. Because I do sympathize with the teachers, I empathize with them, and that fear of, is this going to happen again? And as you heard from both Wayne and mine's talk, we both say yes, it will happen again. We're not, we don't like being doomsday sayers, and that's not our goal here, but we also believe in being transparent and honest. And again, the data we serve comes from the Navy's own studies. So thank you for that. Appreciate the comment.
Osatui, you have a question?
I just noticed that Reina, I'm not sure what school Reina's at, put something in the chat, and I was wondering if she would be willing to tell us what school she's at and what she's going through. And if any other teachers who are on here want to tell their story as well, I think we'd love to hear more of your stories as well.
Hi, yes, I'm Reina. Thank you for reading what I wrote in the chat. Sorry, I'm at home with my family, so it's a little bit chaotic, but yeah, I just wanted to I listened to what all the teachers shared, and I do agree. I just wanted to voice my input, like that we do have those 5-gallon jugs, but they're only filled halfway. And it was only recently that it got filled up halfway in an effort to conserve water. And so I've been having to pump water for each kid. And I notice it takes 3 pumps for water to come out. And I just basically tell my students, I'm going to only pump 2 times because otherwise we're going to run out. And once we run out, I'm going to have to come out every single time to get a bottled water and pour it on your hands after you wash hands. So I'm definitely teaching throughout the day, but whenever a student has to use the restroom, I have to stop instruction and be like, okay, wait, be right back. Yes, I know you're done using the restroom. Just, put soap on your hand and wait, so that I can come around and pour water on your hands. And it takes, for a little bottled water, my students, 2 students can use it to wash hands. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Raina. And I know Logan is also on. I don't know if she wants to share anything at her school.
I think Blythe summed it up really well. And I know I personally carried 3-gallon jugs the day they got delivered to make sure they all got to classrooms, because it was a group effort and it was all about keeping the kids safe, which, while I believe in our contract and I believe in our professional duties, that day, that's not what took precedence. And that morning, I was actually on campus to help with evacuation drill and climbed through the sprinkler running at Lynch Field, not thinking about where that water source might be. And a 5th grader, bless his little heart, told me, "Hey, you know our water's contaminated, right?" And I was like, "Oh, that's right. Well, I'm not burning and it's okay because that means you're safe." And he's like, "Wow, thanks. But you should go somewhere and dry that off." And I was like, "Don't worry, I'm not on campus all day, so we'll be okay." And he's like, "Thank you for keeping us safe." So the kids appreciate us, and I think that's what's kept us going the most.
Are there any other questions anyone would like to ask? Please use the reactions to raise hand, or you can put your name in the chat.
And if not, maybe some of our other elected officials or other officials might want to chime in and express their thoughts or concerns.
Board of Education Chairperson, Catherine Payne.
Yes, thank you. I did learn a lot from this. One of the questions that comes up for me is, I heard someone talking about the emptying of the tanks and the work that needs to go on before that happens to make sure that's safe. So maybe the Sierra Club gentleman could, if Mr. Tanaka could help me be clear about what might be concerns about taking all that fuel out and what we have to prepare for, because they are so old. And if suddenly we're taking all the fuel out, could that also lead to a major crisis that we have to sort of plan for in advance?
Thank you, Chair Payne. Absolutely, we are concerned about the integrity of the facility. It's designed to defuel, it's designed to transport fuel, or it's supposed to transport fuel from the tanks to, Pearl Harbor. But given that we still don't know where this contamination came from, or if there may be now compromises to integrity of the pumping system of the pipes, there is a legitimate concern that immediate defueling without doing a safety assessment could lead to further contamination. That being said, we're concerned about every day that this 180 million gallons of fuel stays in Kapukaki is, a day that disaster is potentially on our doorstep. And so we want to make sure that the Navy complies in good faith, or as best as it can, to expeditiously do its assessment, come up with a work plan for any corrective actions necessary to safely defuel, and then defuel, as expeditiously as possible. Unfortunately, for the last 7 years, that hasn't necessarily been the case with the Navy's commitments after the big spill in 2014. And so that's why we think it's even more important now that people don't let their guard down, and that they continue to push our elected representatives, both here and in Congress, as well as reach out to the president as a commander-in-chief and the Pentagon, who are the ones that can really, I think, help cut through a lot of the bureaucracy that is the Department of Defense.
And I'd like to add to what Wayne said. They're excellent, Wayne. They're totally spot on. They can do it like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I've heard this proposed from several folks. Defuel the really old ones that have not. There are records that some of these tanks haven't been inspected in over 40 years. So start with the oldest ones first and go about it in a very logical, planned out manner, as Wayne was saying. So I do believe it can be done. There's always a risk, but they use this is an active fuel tank farm. They are using that fuel constantly. They're always refueling, fuels going in and out on a regular basis. So I do believe with proper planning, Par Hawaii has come out, it's been in the newspaper where they say they could take up to about a third of the fuel. So there are immediate mitigation measures that could be done, but it does need to be planned well. But I think there are a lot of good people in Hawaii, that they could fly in people, experts from the mainland to help them with this. So I think it can be done safely and effectively. And yes, obviously it can't be done in 5, but it takes them about a week, I believe they said, for them to defuel one tank. That's what we heard when we went on our tour. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Wayne.
Next, we have Council Member Radiant Cordero.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I didn't speak earlier. I was quite holding it back while everyone was talking, and even up until this last minute, so I had to compose myself. Thank you all for allowing me to join you all this week. My name is this evening. My name is Radiant Cordero. I'm a newbie, newbie elected, and I represent on the city and county side, although not specifically related to those that are on the federal properties, but 5 out of the 7 schools that are connected to the Navy's water system, which includes, Pearl Harbor, Pearl Harbor Kai, Nimitz, Mukulele, Hickam, and did I name everything? I think I did. And so far, I was able to join my Senator Glenn Mackay in assisting with, I guess, the plethora of water that was provided to Nimitz Elementary. And definitely I'm glad I'm here because this is where I can make the connections with you all. With that, I know Pete mentioned, so this is me speaking on my own personal behalf, what Pete mentioned about the reparations and getting funding that from the federal government, the DoD. You've seen in his message how much the DoD has been appropriated funding for, and I support that, and I hope that I could use my position, no matter if it's within the city and county of Honolulu, to fight for that funding to go to basically the damage and embarrassment that they've done to all of our families. It's I always say that it's beyond a military issue because it has definitely affected a lot of you all, and so I really want to thank you all because Rep. Johansson said this beautifully. You are really the semblance of how do I say this, of normalcy for a lot of them, of what is most normal as they can get right now. So even though it is a lot of weight on you all to be relied on so much, I really hope that I can utilize any resource or contacts that we can from any of our community members across the island and even the state to figure out like how we can continue to help support the schools. With that, I also am concerned about the and I know the Department of Health has issued, is making sure that this is okay, but like the possible flushing or releasing of water into Halawa Stream, where Halawa Stream comes from the top of the mountain all the way and hugs a lot of the homes and the schools that you all are at every single day. And just making sure that the water that continues to flow is not contaminated and that it doesn't ruin the topographical nature of the stream, because I know that a lot of our neighbors are already always playing in the stream or utilize the stream for gardening and whatnot. So that is something on the city side, although it is us on the state and federal issue, that I want to keep keep up with. With that, I think collaboration is a strength right now. So as Rep. Johansson mentioned, you know, a great collaboration from the top to our state and county levels, and just supporting what the state is doing, but especially on the city level, for me, is our Board of Water Supply. They have been amazing. They are the ones who actually informed me about what was happening. You know, we were confused as to why we were getting these concerns or these calls on a Monday or Tuesday, I should say. And, you know, Kathleen and the Board of Water Supply realized quick enough that the Navy was not going to be informing really any of us. And so I really want to thank them. So thank you all again for this time. I apologize for that long-winded response, but I just really wanted to be here to hear from you all. Once again, thank you.
Wahi, your question?
Aloha, thank you very much. I am not sure who would best address. I do want to thank both our teachers, all of our teachers who spoke, as well as Wayne. Thank you for ending and focusing on our keiki. So this is my question. We've been focusing on the keiki from our schools that were affected, but we also have students who are not attending those schools, are attending outside schools. Being from my Ea High School, I know that we have approximately 22 students who are coming from AMR into IAEA complex, including IAEA High School, that my students are doing. And I am worried about their mental health. And so I am wondering, what services are there or are planned for the students who are not at those key schools, but are still affected by this crisis? And how do we address that? Anyone that might help?
I'm not so I obviously can't speak to you know, what the Navy's plans are, even DOE, to kind of deal with the mental and behavioral health aspects of what's going on. I've been very discouraged about how, you know, about the lack of services, lack of acknowledgement of folks who aren't, you know, like the civilians and the civilian housing that's also in the Navy system, like how they haven't been getting support. I would recommend documenting, to the extent that people can document as much as they can, any of the ways that they've been impacted. And I think that's gonna be very important going forward as we try to get reparations for the people that have been harmed. But yeah, so, you know, if you can record, you know, or if like journals or you know, time, date, all the details that you can get together, I think that might be a very important step to take. Yeah, thank you.
Are there any last minute questions? We have 6 minutes from concluding for tonight.
I had one quick question. Are the pipes that are sending the fuel down to Pearl Harbor and stuff, are they any safer than the tanks themselves, right?
No, not at all. And in fact, our board of directors for the Board of Water Supply, after the May incident, actually went back and amended a previous resolution to include all the pipes and all the infrastructure, not just the tanks. And in fact, the last two incidents are claiming they are from the pipes. But please I just want to make this comment. The Navy right now is trying to act like it's all in the pipes. And I'm sorry, I don't mean, we're not anti-Navy. I want to make that clear. But the tanks are also leaking. It's very clear they're trying to say, oh no, it was just the pipes, but the tanks are leaking. It's the whole system. Some of that piping is probably also from the 1940s. So thank you, sir. That's an excellent question. Thank you very much.
And think I'll just close it, Amanda, if you don't mind. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. I think I learned a whole lot. I think a lot of folks on here learned a whole lot. Mahalo, Kathleen and Wayne. Mahalo, teachers Cindy, Michelle, Ilani, Blythe, Jennifer, Neva, Berta, and Ray and Amanda, and Rena. You know, this issue might not be on the news nightly, but it's still a major effect daily, as we've heard going on in our schools. You know, we've heard that, oh, you know, there's school buses, so no need to worry, but we didn't hear about the 5:30 in the morning that the kids get picked up. You know, we've heard that, you know, they're in the hotels, but we didn't hear that others are not in the hotels. We didn't hear that there's a lack of washing machines and that kids have to go to school in their pajamas. You know, I hear that some of our cafeterias are back in service, but we haven't heard that there are those that are not back in service and they're continuing to serve pizza and chicken nuggets every day to these poor students who have to, you know, close their eyes and imagine that they're eating something else. I mean, we have so many schools that don't even have cafeterias where they have something trucked in from a different school. Couldn't we find some way to do something like that for these schools that have to have frozen pizza and chicken nuggets every day? And ultimately, these tanks need to be defueled and the facility must be shut down. When this fuel then affects our entire water supply, what are we going to do? There's not going to be hotels for the entire island to run to, you know, in order to get, you know, what we need. And so how can you support? Call each school. Each school has their individual needs. Call the school, ask their administrators, what can we do to help you? Call your elected officials, let them know that, you know, they need to support everything that Rep. Johansson talked about. Talk to your Board of Education folks, and I believe that next month they will be taking this up. Write in, tell them your support for doing something and to join the chorus of voices to do something. And then you see a lot of mention in the posters. You can see right above my head, there are these posters as well. So if you're interested in a poster, Amanda is going to be emailing everyone that's attended and everyone who even signed up to attend. If you want a poster, we will work with Pete. Thank you, Mahalo, Pete, to get everyone posters. So, you know, this is about making sure that our keiki can have some normalcy that we talked about, making sure that our keiki have a future here on Oahu and in Hawaii, right? If this fuel gets into our water stream, this is going to affect all of us severely. And so mahalo to all of you who are working so hard to try and make the most of this. And again, thank you so much for everyone coming tonight and learning a lot more. Please spread the word. We will have this recording available on HSTA's YouTube, and we will have more of it on our hsta.org website as well. And with that, I bid you a fond farewell this evening. Mahalo.